Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, a spotlight podcast. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
So climate change has been studied, discussed, debated for decades now, but it's becoming more widely accepted as a time-sensitive and urgent call to action. Here to share what renewable natural gas is and how it can be part of the solution is a senior environmental scientist from Barr Engineering, Mr. Jason Linkimer. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Happy to be here.
So listeners, you may be able to go look in my archives to find a conversation we had with Jason maybe a year and a half ago, and there's a great discussion about this topic, and today we're going to kind of follow up on it and maybe get a bit of an update. So to kind of kick us off, talk a little bit about Barr Engineering as a whole. What type of company is it? What are all the disciplines that you serve?
Sure thing, Chris. Thanks, and I appreciate being here today. So Barr Engineering is a full-service engineering and environmental consulting company. We're employee-owned, and that's a really important topic for us, which maybe we'll talk about that a little bit too. But as I said, full service engineering and environmental. So every discipline of engineering, mechanical, civil, structural, electrical. And then on the environmental side, we do a lot of the permitting, compliance, investigation, remediation. We were founded in 1966 by Doug Barr, and we've been employee owned ever since then.
So now what does employee-owned actually mean from a mechanic standpoint, and why does that maybe serve as a competitive advantage or make it a cooler place to work?
Yeah, sure thing. It's at our core. Employee ownership means that we all take ownership of every commitment that we make. And at the end of the day, if our company is successful, we are successful as individuals. We have a no retained earnings policy at our company. So at the end of the year, if the company does well and we've got profit, all that profit goes back out to our employee owners. And the ownership model is very, very broad. There's not a single individual that owns more than 1% of the company. So I'm an owner. Everybody that works at Barr for at least 1 year becomes eligible for the employee stock ownership program.
And that's kind of just baked into your compensation, that there's like an annual instead of an annual bonus based on some CEO's and CFO probably is budgeting.
Right.
This is really a true, everyone's got their own kind of percentage or share or whatever. And
it gets distributed based on performance as well as your role within the company.
Right.
So yes, I've been at Barr for nearly 18 years now. And when we think about our total compensation package, it's our salaries, but it's also the employee stock ownership program that provides dividends on the stocks that we own.
Yep.
It's an internal stock program. And then at the end of the year, those profits are also distributed. So a cash bonus program.
Right on.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And so the competitive advantage is that everyone just kind of has a skin in the game and operates at a higher level of kind of client satisfaction and performance and speed. And you don't have people just kind of wandering.
Exactly.
As a disengaged employee. It tends to root people in a little deeper.
Yeah. People really dive in and we're passionate about the work that we're doing. And
right.
So when you're passionate about the technical topic, but you're also kind of relying on your colleagues to perform well,
right?
It kind of unites us. It creates a very strong team environment. And, we've got about 1,000 people in our company now.
Wow.
We've got offices across North America. Here in Michigan, we've got one in Ann Arbor and one in Grand Rapids.
Okay.
And a lot of successful growth in the past few years and excited.
So what's your discipline? How did you get into this?
So I went to school at Indiana University through the School of Public and Environmental Affairs. I have a degree in environmental management. And at the time, I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I was studying environmental law at the time as well as the science. So it was the mix between science and policy. Started my career climbing smokestacks, testing air emissions.
Wow. Okay.
That was interesting. I did that for about a year. And my company actually still has a stack testing group. I'm not doing that part of it anymore. I kind of transitioned more into the consulting, environmental permitting, compliance. I'm really intrigued by the natural world, by natural resources, how we develop them, how we process them, and sometimes have to restore them as well. But I'm also intrigued by business. And so this is a great intersection of the environmental world as well as the business world.
Got it. Okay. So renewable natural gas, I mean, clearly, when we talk about getting away from fossil fuel, I mean, I'm going to be crude about this because this is not my discipline, so correct me if I'm wrong, but, coal and fossil fuels in general and trying to go electric and solar and wind and electric vehicles and all that kind of stuff. what is renewable natural gas, and
Okay.
is it fair to put that as a kind of part of the solution to getting away from what we've been doing to
Sure.
fixing the things that are wrong with our environment?
Yeah. So renewable natural gas, it is basically recovering the methane from organic material as it breaks down. So if you think about food scraps, wastewater treatment facilities, landfills, manure from farms, agricultural waste, that is all organic material. And we oftentimes think of that as waste. Well, waste means that there's no additional purpose for it. Well, all of these materials are organic material, and they break down, and there's energy associated with that. And so as methane is released, that typically in the past has just been going straight to the environment. Methane is a very potent greenhouse gas pollutant when it's emitted directly to the atmosphere. And so what RNG projects are doing is essentially capturing that methane. And methane is the primary constituent. It is the constituent of fossil natural gas.
Right. Okay.
And so if we're able to recognize the human activities that are creating, and I don't like to use it as waste. I call it a resource. I think it's a recoverable resource. And that's kind of a shift that is happening right now. I think that a lot of governments, a lot of industry are recognizing that we can repurpose the things that we have traditionally just been getting rid of. And so in the mix of the energy balance, I think that we are in a tremendous transition period right now, but there is no silver bullet that's going to create a solution overnight.
Right. It's a bunch of things all happening at the same time.
Exactly. And so I look at RNG as a piece of the puzzle. It's growing in, I guess, popularity because people are starting to understand that we have a lot of waste. We have a lot of organic material that can be repurposed. And so I think it's part of the energy balance. It's not going to completely offset traditional fossil natural gas. It's not going to offset coal completely. But it is part of the mix, and it's an important part because we are decarbonizing our energy by doing that. So when you use methane that has been recovered from organic material, you're getting the benefit of capturing it so that methane is not going directly to the atmosphere.
Yep.
But then when you actually utilize that, it's converting methane. So when that is combusted, it's converting that into CO2. Now, CO2 is also a greenhouse gas pollutant, but is much less potent in the environment. And so we are recognizing a very reduced impact by doing that. Now, there's also the thought of electrification and, transitioning to that, but that is not possible overnight. And so RNG is part of this near-term solution because it's available right now. The technology to convert organic material into energy is happening right now.
And to use my science hat, so that's like a double whammy. I mean, so it's so using RNG, if that is the right way to put it. So you're preventing this material that exists anyway from doing something bad and turning it into doing something good, and it already exists.
We need energy, right? I mean, nobody wants to stop driving their cars. Nobody wants to stop using their heat at their home or powering different applications. And so we need to figure out how to do that with less impact.
So using, sure, absolutely. So using that methane, converting that into energy, what are the practical, easiest places that can be used? I mean, I'm probably not going to pump methane into my car, right? And,
actually.
Okay.
So right now, the majority of RNG is being used in the transportation sector.
Really?
Yes. So when you recover the gas coming from these different organic sources, it can be compressed or it can be turned into liquefied natural gas. There are vehicles, fleet vehicles primarily, that are running on natural gas. That's so the primary.
And I've seen that. Usually they're advertising that they're doing it because
If you think about large fleet vehicles, whether they are waste companies or I'll say companies like UPS, they've been investing in RNG because converting a diesel vehicle to run on natural gas is fairly simple. Now, I'm not an automotive engineer, but my understanding is the conversion of a diesel vehicle to natural gas vehicle is much easier than having to buy a whole new vehicle that is electrified.
Okay.
And so there are fleets that are converting from diesel to, I'll call it renewable natural gas, compressed natural gas. And so the reason why that is where the majority of RNG is being used is because of legislative activity. So the federal renewable fuel standard incentivizes low carbon fuels, as well as state-run low-carbon fuel standards, and I'll point to the California one because that is the most mature. That's where the majority of the gas is being diverted, is into the transportation sector, because there's a recognized need to lower the impact from our transportation-related emissions. Flip side of that is RNG, just like fossil natural gas, can be used for thermal applications. It can be used in our appliances. Anywhere where you're using natural gas right now, RNG can offset that.
Got it. Okay. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so you talk about all the places that this methane is being naturally produced, right?
Yep.
So what's the best and fastest way to harness that? I've heard about landfills, right? Because in fact, when you drive by landfills, first of all, you can smell it.
Yep.
Even if you're passing it on the freeway, there's that like 2 miles of here it comes, there it is, and there it goes. But in a lot of cases, you see a stack,
Sure.
with the flame coming out of the top. Is
Yep,
that
that's
them
a flare.
naturally burning it because you can't just, it just doesn't go on its own? Or
Sure.
is that an environmental preventative thing? If we burn it, it's better than it storing up and explode. I mean, I don't know anything about it, but tell me about that.
Yeah, so landfills, typically there is a gas collection system at a landfill.
Okay.
And historically, when that gas collection system was put in place, it was to capture the methane that was coming off. And before that, there was a recognized need or desire to utilize that energy source.
Yep.
It was just flared. It was burned off. And then I don't know exactly what year it started happening, but a lot of these large landfills were capturing that gas and recognizing, well, geez, we could, use this to create energy. And then the federal renewable portfolio standards are actually the state implemented renewable portfolio standards, which impacts power generation. So like utilities, there were incentives to recognize, hey, we can offset some of our traditional fossil natural gas with this gas that's coming off of the landfills, because it can be used to generate electricity right there at the landfill. So landfills is one thing, and what has happened through the past, I'd say, 10 years is a recognition that we can not only capture it at landfills, and instead of burning it in either generators or turbines, we can condition it, clean it up to remove the other constituents that we don't really want to use. Can't really put into our natural gas pipelines. So CO2, hydrogen sulfide, condensation, strip all of that stuff out, and then you end up with nearly pure methane, and that can be injected into the interstate natural gas pipelines and used. Other sources, so let's say like a dairy farm,
Right.
Very common here in Michigan.
Yeah. So how do you harness that?
Right. So dairy cows are typically in a building, and so they're basically capturing the manure in a system that allows it to be essentially scraped and processed, and that gets put into an anaerobic digester. An anaerobic digester is essentially a large container absent of oxygen. That's what anaerobic means.
Okay.
So in an anaerobic condition, organic material will break down and methane is generated. That methane is captured in that anaerobic digester, as well as the other constituents like CO2 and H2S, hydrogen sulfide. And those things are basically removed from the gas stream. So oftentimes what you'll see is you'll still have a flare either at a landfill or at a facility that is processing the manure. But what that flare is doing is burning off the stuff that we don't want.
Other stuff. Yeah. Okay. I get it.
And then the pure methane is then captured, and it can either be injected into a pipeline if you are adjacent to a pipeline with an interconnect right there. Otherwise, it can be compressed and put into tanker trucks, and then it can be moved wherever it needs to be, whether that's to an interconnection point on a pipeline or taken to an industrial facility for use as natural gas. So there are a lot of different applications.
So it seems like setting up a system like that certainly is more efficient if it's a massive,
right,
thing, right? So is it effective to? That's probably too far in the weeds to even try to discuss here, but to set that up in like every dairy farm. Now, granted, not all dairy farms are the same, right? You've got a guy who's got 100 head of cattle and a guy who's got 30,000 head of cattle. You're clearly going to want to go to the 30,000 head of cattle guy first, right?
Exactly.
But is I guess the punchline is, why am I not hearing anything about RNG with the amount of attention that I pay towards climate change and electrification of vehicles and solar and wind and some of those things? Is it contentious? Are there people, is there a downside? Like, you read, read a post about something that Tesla or Rivian or someone, these electric cars that are coming out and from the big three, certainly. And immediately the social media comments are, it's all crap and this isn't the path we should be going down and it's a waste of time. Is there that kind of naysayer audience in RNG?
So the idea of RNG should not be contentious because, as I said at the beginning,
it's already there.
We're capturing existing emissions of methane that are creating a climate change issue. And so we're capturing that and repurposing it. So with that as the backdrop, there are people that are opposed to it. And in my mind, that's more of disagreements about societal issues as far as large factory farms or a desire for a different type of energy source. But as I said also towards the beginning, I think that we need a diversified mix of energy.
Right.
And decarbonizing our existing system, RNG is a great way to do it right now. Like, it's available today. The electrification is going to take some time.
Yeah, right.
And, there are naysayers on that. There are naysayers about fossil fuel. I'm open, me personally, and the way that I think that the RNG market is developing is, we know that it's not the silver bullet. We know that it's not going to save the planet just by doing RNG.
Right.
But it is a very impactful thing that we can be doing right now to start reducing that impact.
Well, I know we're a little bit over on time, but I have two final questions before we wrap up. So you're Barr Engineering, but clearly RNG is a thing that is global, right? I would imagine there are scientists like you in Sweden and China and India that are aware that this is a thing. Yep. What do you collectively need to do this more?
Yeah.
If that's a blunt way to put it.
I think that one big thing is education. I will say that RNG is a lot further along now than it was 5 or 10 years ago. And that is because of awareness, education, advocacy. And that's part of what I do. So we are working on RNG projects, like the technical aspects on the engineering and environmental side. But I'm also participating in national dialogue about how do we continue to enhance and improve the knowledge of what RNG is. Don't make it scary.
Right.
Break it down to the simple things. One creative way that I've thought of is here in Michigan, we love beer, craft beer.
Right. Yep.
Well, if you think about craft beer, craft
Spent
spirits, all the spent grains, that's organic material. And right now, that material is being shipped to different places to basically be disposed of as waste. Well, let's not recognize it as waste. Let's recognize that as a resource so we can create this circular economy.
Right. Put it all in one place.
Yeah.
Put that unit, make it the 30,000 head of cattle dairy plant, but put all that waste in one spot.
Yeah.
Energize. So are there utility companies that would be the people that would kind of orchestrate all of that? Or are there entrepreneurs that just say, hey, I'm a private guy with some capital, I'll invest and kind of create that spent grain site and pay to get the thing set up and then make the money off of selling the utility? How does that work?
It is a mix.
Okay.
There are a lot of participants in this market, and it continues to grow day by day.
Okay.
I would say every energy company on the planet is paying attention to RNG.
Got it.
They are investing in it. I don't know. I pay attention to it a lot closer than some of the other folks, but on a daily basis, I'm reading about acquisitions and people investing in RNG because they're becoming aware of just the immediate impact that it can have on decarbonization goals.
Right. Okay. How would people get in touch with Barr Engineering if they wanted to learn more?
Sure. www.barr.com.
B-A-R-R.
B-A-R-R.
Okay.
Barr Engineering Company is the full name. We're also on all the social media stuff.
Okay.
You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Right on. And then are there any publications that are not maybe Barr written that people could go to, or blogs or places that you would say are credible sources to learn more in this particular space?
Yeah, I would make a plug for the RNG Coalition. They are the industry standard. That's where basically all the participants in this market are gathering, and they provide very comprehensive information about RNG.
Got it. We've been talking to Jason Linkimer, a senior environmental scientist from Barr Engineering. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks,
I love
Chris.
this topic. We could go on for days.
I know. I agree.
Have a good one.
Thanks.